What's up, guys? You can check out our podcast, articles, or our full proxy gallery, all at our brand new website, www.itresolvesmtg.com. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Crack-A-Pack series. Today we are opening up a pack of Throne of Eldraine, obviously the newest set, which is really interesting. Normally we don't get the brand new sets, but really excited to be opening this. There's a lot of really cool stuff in this one. I've enjoyed drafting this a lot on Arena. Hopefully you guys have too. Lots of really powerful cards in here. These packs are a little bit backwards, so let me see if I can, hopefully... if I remember how this goes correctly. Okay, token. I'm a look. Sorry, guys. I got to do this. Okay, cool. We got it in order. Okay, so of course we are going to go through this as if we are drafting this set. So we'll go through every card, but we're going to talk about each one, hopefully figure out what our first round draft pick would be. Excuse me. So our first card here is Steelgaze Griffin. It is a 2/4 with flying for 4 and a blue. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets +2/+0 until the end of the turn. There is a Izzet blue-red specifically for anybody that doesn't know Izzet terms, but it's a draw card kind of theme. So the idea here is that you draw your second card every turn and get a lot of bonuses off of it. There's in particular a very good powerful 2-mana enchantment that does a lot of work in that deck. Hopefully we'll get to see it. But really powerful deck if you can get it off the ground. This is technically a finisher for the deck, but it's not the best finisher in the world. It is fairly expensive for a 2/4. Yes, you can, proc it, do some extra stuff, but at best it's going to be a 4/4 for 5 mana. Now that's pretty good considering it has flying, but you have to be able to trigger that every turn. And so I don't love it as a first pick. I do like it in that deck, but again, with caution, I will say. You want it, not too many of it. Reaper of Night is 5 and 2 black for a 4/5. It does also have an adventure side called Harvest Fear. It's 3 and a black for target opponent discards 2 cards at sorcery speed. And then on the Reaper of Night side, whenever it attacks, if the defending player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, it gains flying until the end of the turn. Very similar actually to the Griffin in that this is technically an okay finisher, but it's not an amazing one. I do find it to be quite good as just kind of a discard outlet and then something that the opponent has to deal with. Again, being a 4/5, it does kind of require some kind of answer at some point, especially if you can proc the flying off of it. You can really deal some massive damage with it. The value off of discarding 2 cards quite good. Ideally, you'd want to be playing that first every single time. Again, though, it's not a super powerful card. It's not like a first pickable card. It's not something that I'm looking at thinking, okay, I have to be playing black now. And so we'll look through the rest of the pack, hopefully not having to first pick either of these two, if I'm going to be honest. Trapped in the Tower is an enchant creature for 1 and, an enchantment aura for 1 and a white. You do have to enchant a creature with flying, and the enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities cannot be activated. This is not an amazing removal spell, but it is a removal spell, and so you do have to treat it as such. There are a lot of things with flying in this set. We've already seen the Griffin, potentially the Reaper of Night, though this would never actually hit it. And it's actually a perfectly fine card to main deck. I think if you main deck one of these, you're good. You do tend to find something to hit with it, but there are much better targets than others, so you do kind of have to be a little bit careful. I don't love it again as a first pick, but I do think that it's not bad. I think you do have to really value the removal in this set, because there are so many really powerful creatures you can hit, but don't love this one as a first pick, but I do think so far it's the pick. We'll see what we get through the rest of the pack, though. Crashing Drawbridge is a 0/4 defender for 2 of any color, and you can tap it, and creatures you control gain haste until the end of the turn. Normally, I'm super not in for cards like this. However, it grants haste, and haste can actually be very good. Not only that, but there are kind of some artifact sub-themes with particular archetypes if you can actually make it happen. This is by no means a flagship card for it, but it's not a bad card to have. It's one of those that allows you to hopefully get in for a little bit of damage quicker than you normally would be able to, and I think that that's quite good. The games in this set tend to go quite long. and so anything you can do to kind of quicken that clock is going to be really, really useful. I don't love this as a first pick, though. Definitely not worth it as a first pick, but if you find yourself in an artifact kind of focus deck with the Shambling Shells or whatever that, I believe it's Shambling Shell, where it gets hits on power based on how many artifacts you have, it's great to be able to pull something like this out. But because of food and things like that, the games tend to go fairly long. You're able to gain a lot of extra life, things like that. And unfortunately, that means the aggro decks have a bit of a tough time in this format. We'll be honest. Now, certainly you can make them work. I've had some luck with them, but you tend to focus on the mid to late game in this set. And so this is not an ideal card, but it's not bad for certain decks. Return to Nature is an instant for 1 and a green, and you choose 1. Destroy target artifact, target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. Actually not a bad card. You can generally main deck a card like this. Normally I would say you would sideboard this, of course, but you're always going to find a target. I'm going to say 98% of the time you'll find a target because food is in this set. And yes, it feels bad to destroy a food token. However, that could be a lot. The food stuff is actually really, really powerful. I underrated it as a mechanic 100% when the set first came out. But it does make for some really interesting interactions, and you always have to consider that sacking some food can gain some life. With things like the Tempting Witch, it can actually deal damage and be a win condition, so it's actually nice to have a card like this. It's not obviously an ideal first choice. You'd much rather be able to sideboard something like this, but it is just fine to main deck, as a one of most likely. Still don't like it more than Trapped in a Tower, but don't think it's a bad card. Definitely something that you can play. Bloodhaze Wolverine is a 2/1 for 1 and a red, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets +1/+1 and gains first strike until the end of the turn. Again, we're seeing this in tandem with the Griffin, that red-blue kind of draw card theme. This is another one of those cards that really benefits off of that, and it's actually a really solid 2-drop, I will say. It's a 2/1, so even on the onset, it's probably going to trade with most other 2-drops. Not always the case. There are certainly some objections to that, but it does deal with a lot. Giving it first strike is awesome. That just means it's going to be reliably swinging in the early turns of the game for some extra damage, hopefully get you a little bit ahead in that race. That's really, really powerful. I don't think it's necessarily better than Trapped in a Tower. I don't think either one's an amazing first pick, if I'm going to be honest. So I'm going to pass on this, but I do really, really like it as a solid 2-drop in that deck. Outmuscle is a sorcery for 3 and a green. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Then it fights target creature you do not control. And then this does have Adamant, which is a new mechanic for this set. So if at least 3 green mana was spent to cast this, that creature, the creature you control, gains indestructible until the end of the turn. Also a really great buff. I actually really like this card. I do think this is better than Trapped in the Tower. Again, limited tends to be a creature-focused format, so you're probably going to have a good number of creatures out that you can tag this with, and then hopefully deal with one of the opponent's creatures. So I really like this. This is just really solid removal for green, so it's a really great pickup. Fling. Absolutely love this card. So it's an instant for 1 and a red. You do have to sacrifice a creature as an additional cost to cast it. However, it deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. That could be a planeswalker, that could be a player, that could be a creature, anything. And that's actually quite good. I say hesitantly, I overvalue this card. I will go ahead and say both Will and I overvalue this card because we've had really good luck with it. But it is very luck-based. You have to have the right board state to make this card good. You have to reliably have a creature out that's going to be able to deal enough damage for it to actually matter. But a lot of times what you find yourself being able to do is deal the last few points of damage to the opponent for the win, or deal the last few points of damage to a creature that you just blocked to be able to destroy, one of their bombs or something like that. It is a very flexible, lucrative card. However, it's not a good first pick. It's something you pick very, very late in the pack. It is, I would say, borderline unplayable, but still a very powerful card, I think, in certain instances. Unfortunately, not here. Witching Well is an artifact for 1 blue. When it enters the battlefield, you scry 2. And then you can pay 3 and a blue, sacrifice it, and draw 2 cards. This is one of those really, really great ways to trigger that second draw every turn. And not only that, but this triggers technically on the opponent's turn. You can do this on the opponent's turn, and because you're drawing 2 cards, you do actually get the proc off of all the creatures and things like that we've seen that enables this. So it's actually a very, very nice card to be able to play on turn 1 and then later sacrifice for some card draw. I like it quite a lot. I don't think it's a first pick by any means, but I do think it's a very strong artifact. It does also count towards your artifacts, so if you find yourself in that kind of sub-theme, it's a very, very good card to have. Again, not the pick here, I don't think yet, but I do think it's a nice card to pick up kind of mid-pack if you end up in that deck. Silver Flame Squire is 1 and a white for a 2/1. It also has an adventure on alert for 2 and a white. So target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of the turn. You can also untap it. It is an instant speed, so you can really, really surprise some people with that, which I love. The creature side of it is just a vanilla 2/1, nothing too spectacular there. I don't love this card, but there are really, really powerful adventure decks that you can get, and having combat tricks on creatures makes them so much better. This isn't the best one in my opinion, but it is a very, very good one to be able to just untap, deal some extra damage, or do whatever you need to do. Really, really good. So not the pick here in my opinion. There's an artifact in this set that lets you double proc off of your adventures, which is really nice, and I love that card. If we find that in the pack, that's going to be high up on the list, but that goes really, really well in this green-white kind of adventure shell if you can get a lot of adventure spells. So definitely like it in that deck, but it's not a reason to be in that deck by any means, and Outmuscle is just a more powerful card. Our food token, our island, I have to do this so you guys don't see the rare. Okay, Lock Dragon is 4 hybrid of either blue or red. It is a 3/2 with flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can discard a card, and then if you do, draw a card. This is another one of those flagship cards that goes in that second draw kind of theme. It's really, really good to be able to just drop this on 4, get some procs off of the other stuff that you've already got, swing in for a lot of damage, and then be able to reliably do that if you can swing in every turn with this card. Absolutely love it in that deck. It is a very, very good flagship card for that deck. And I do think it's more a higher priority pick than Outmuscle right off the bat. Just because it is a flying threat, and I really, really like the flying threat aspect of it, but it also does dig you through your deck. It's got a lot of upside as well. So definitely think so far this is the pick. All That Glitters is an enchant creature for 1 and a white. The enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Again, we talked about that artifact sub-theme. This plays into that as well as the enchantment kind of sub-theme. There is kind of a blue-white deck that focuses around that. And this is a powerful card. There's no doubt about it. If you find yourself in that sub-theme, you can really deal a lot of damage with just this card. There's high upside, but there's also high downside. Of course, you can 2-for-1 yourself with a card like this, so you do have to be a little bit careful. I find myself not ever playing this card, if I'm honest. I do think that there is a Pioneer deck that loves this. The Boggles deck is in heaven right now because of this card, but I do think in Limited it's a little bit less of a value card for sure, just because if they have any kind of removal spell, you're done. And so definitely worth noting there, but if you find yourself in that deck, I would try it. But I don't think it's a reason to necessarily push there, just because I think that's a very flimsy kind of strategy overall. Ferocity of the Wilds is an enchantment for 2 and a red. Attacking non-human creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. The key here is that it gives trample. It is an enchantment. This is a slow format, so you can kind of get away with it. I've played this a couple times. I've been a little unimpressed with it, if I'm honest. I don't think that's bad. I do think there is a good non-human deck that would love this, but I've not made it work yet. And I don't think this is a reason to be in that deck. I think this is kind of just a backbone for the deck. So I don't love it. Definitely not more than the dragon, but I do think it has a home. I think you need to be established in that home first. And then our rare is actually a mythic. It's Robber of the Rich. It's a 2/2 for 1 and a red. It has reach and haste. And whenever it attacks it, the defending player has more cards in hand than you do. You exile the top card of their library. During any turn you attacked with a rogue, you may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were a mana of any color to cast it. So really interesting card. The takeaway here is it's a 2/2 haster for 2 with reach, which is good. Means it can deal with the Lock Dragon, which is pretty awesome. But it has that incidental upside of being able to steal stuff. That's not reliable. I've seen a lot of people play this card to marginal success, I will say. I do think it's a good card. I do think actually it is the pick here as well. But you do have to understand it's not always going to proc. You're not always going to have the hand sizes aren't always going to be correct. You're not always going to be able to cast this stuff because you're not always going to be able to swing in with this. There are not, to my understanding, a ton of rogues in this set. So you're kind of relying on this guy to be swinging in every turn. And so if you're going to be playing this, you want to look at removal pretty heavily to be able to keep the board clear so you can continuously swing in with it. That way you can continuously play the cards that you're stealing. So I like this card. I do think it's the best card here, but unfortunately I don't think it's an amazing card if I'm going to be honest, but it's fine. I do think it is the pick. Feel free, of course, to disagree in the comment section, but if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like or a comment down below. And as always, please make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our awesome content. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next Crack-A-Pack episode.